because as a parent, when your child says something that means so much to them, whether it sounds crazy to you or not, you've got to support that. It's Rehan's birthday. Yes, he is turning the big 22. And at 22, he is now, oh, there you go. He is now entering. He's specifically made a change in his life. He's going to a new chapter, and it's exciting. But let's go back and learn a little bit more about Rehan and his short life. Short but full life.
Yeah, very full, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, very full life. So his new chapter is he's left the country he's been living in for what, 9 years?
9 years, yeah.
And moved back home,
Mm-hmm.
left his soccer team, and is going on a new journey, which
Yeah.
he's excited about, and we're going to learn more about. And but first, let's go dive into Rehan. When you were growing up,
Uh-huh.
what did you love to do when you were a kid?
Well, you mentioned something, Susan. You mentioned soccer.
Mm-hmm.
That was and is like still to this day the number one thing that I am passionate about. It has been like a love of mine since honestly for as long as I can remember. I think that soccer has been probably the biggest part of my life from the beginning. Um, there were other things obviously like there was music and I still love music and playing instruments like I know how to play the piano, I play the drums, all that stuff. So there are
Wow,
things like that as well.
multi-talented.
I wouldn't say I'm that good at like the piano, for example. The drums I'm not too bad at, but um I'm really good at singing. You should hear me when I sing in the shower. That's it's always fun to hear me do that. But yeah, soccer is definitely the one thing that I've always been passionate about. But then above and beyond just the soccer and everything, from a very young age, I've always had a spot in my heart for my mission in life, which is always to give back and to help others. And
Great
for yeah,
mission.
I've wanted to always like blend the two, mix
Yeah.
soccer with helping others and trying to figure out different ways to do that. So, yeah,
So, usually that isn't instinctual. It doesn't just come out.
yeah.
What, let's look at both things. So when that need to serve and help others, where do you
hmm
think that came from such a young age? You know?
Yeah, so I think one thing is for sure, um, I was given the opportunity to see a lot when it comes to the world. My
Mhm.
parents gave my sister and I the opportunity to travel, to see different parts of the world that are super developed and modern, but also parts of the world that are developing and that, have a lot of poverty, for example, in
Mm.
them, where you have a lot of people who are in need. And I think there was a side of me that had a lot of empathy. And when I was witnessing some of the environments that people were living in, when I was witnessing the people and what they were going through, their challenges, I think that opened up that side of me where I was like, okay, there's something to be done here. There are people in this
Mhm.
world, who unfortunately just don't have the same opportunities that I was given, and there are
Mhm.
people in this world who are in desperate need of help and support, and I just wanted to do my best to be there for those people, and I still want to be there for those people. So I think that's where it comes from. I think it also comes from the fact that my parents are also very um giving people, very generous and
Yeah.
giving people. They've been like that for a while. So yeah, I think there's like a whole mix of things. Sure,
And I
there's
think
who I
that's
am,
yeah,
but
and I think getting exposed at a young age, or even in your teens,
yeah.
to having you your parents, you
Mhm.
see them actually giving, and they probably talk about it, right? They talk
Yeah.
about what they're doing. Here's why I'm giving, here's why what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And to actually expose you to those who are less fortunate, I think is so valuable
Yeah.
into getting that intrinsic heart centered gratitude of what, oh my gosh, my life is so great.
Yeah.
And then it instills wanting to help other people. I did that with my kids. We went on mission trips and we helped people in the deepest parts of Mexico where they just had nothing. They're living in cardboard houses and we built houses for them. And
Yeah.
ever since they did that, it changes this whole thing inside of you.
Yeah.
So highly recommend that parents expose their children
For
early,
sure.
as early
Yeah.
as possible. And if you haven't done it yet, do it now.
Yeah.
And then when
Yeah.
you give, talk about it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and like Tony Robbins, for example, he has what he calls the six human needs, right? One of those needs is contribution.
mhm,
And I only realized, like I only heard about this later on in my like teenage years, but then it was still something that I had within me of like this want and almost this need to give back and to help people and to serve. So it's really interesting when you actually break it down. Contributing and giving to people is actually one of the six human needs that all of us have.
mhm.
Um, and to expose other people, our loved ones, and the people who are close to us to things like that. And it's a different experience, and it really unlocks things that,
Good word. Yeah.
yeah, it
Good word to
unlocks
use
things inside people for
for
sure.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to now, this love for soccer.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember, you said it when you were very young. Do you remember what happened to like spark this passion? I mean, do you remember anything of that when you were a kid? Like,
Yes.
because I
So,
mean, most kids do not get a passion as strong as yours at such a young
yeah.
age.
Yeah. Um, so if I were to go back, okay, I'm gonna tell a little story here. When I was 4 years old, that was the first time that I was ever exposed to playing soccer like at a club or anything like that. Um, so at the age of 4, my dad he took me to like our local club, and this was like on day one. So on day one, what they do is they have all the kids, they come out and then they just play with each other and then they make their teams, right? Because they want to make the teams as equal as possible and stuff like that. So they just look okay, and they make their teams pretty much. That first day, I was so shy because I was so scared to like be with all these other kids. Like I just didn't want to mix myself with any of them. Like I was just like,
You
who are all
shy?
these people? So I'm holding on to my dad's like leg for dear life, like literally just hanging on to his jeans, crying, like actually like sobbing. Um, Probably embarrassing him and also embarrassing myself. But yeah, I did not play on that first day. Um, and then after that, like, the days that came, they put me on some random team, and the other days that came, just started to play and have fun and enjoy it. And then you fast forward like 5 to 6 years, I started playing a lot more competitively and getting to a level where soccer wasn't just something that I was doing for fun. I was competing, I was training hard, I was giving it my all. And in the back of my head, there was this little dream of mine. There's this little dream to become a professional soccer player. Now, for someone like me who, was living in Canada at the time, that dream is something that you is even further away because, I mean, in Canada, soccer, especially at that time, was not as developed as what it is today and what it can be in the future. So it was like, okay, sure, you have this dream, but what are you gonna do about it? Like, how are
Mm.
you gonna make it a reality? Like, it's so hard. Uh, and then yeah, I just with the support, especially of my family, and especially like my dad, he would be the one to take me to practice, and we'd debrief after games, and we'd debrief after practice, and he'd take me everywhere, and he would actually like early morning, like this when I was 10, 11 years old, early in the morning at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. in the morning before school. we'd wake up early together and we'd go to like the soccer field that's not too far with the track, and I'd go for my runs and he would go like walking around the track, and I'd train and do all that stuff like early morning, and he would take me. So there are all these different things that kind of reinforced this dream that I had and almost turned it into something that was more tangible, where I was like, yes, it's a dream, but I'm actually working towards it. It's not just this dream that I have in my head where I'm thinking about it all the day. I'm not all the time. I'm not daydreaming. That's pretty much what it was.
Yeah. So I have a
I'm
question to
actually,
that your dad was so invested
yeah,
to help you by doing all of these things. Do
yeah,
you feel like did you already have that passion there and he saw it in you so that he then said, okay, I'm with you, son. I'm gonna do everything I can to help you reach this goal you have,
yeah.
or was he on you, like on you, you know?
No, actually, I think he saw the fact that he's actually told me this. The fact that I believed in myself made him believe in me.
Mm,
And so it was more, he was there as a supporter, but then almost like his the way he was thinking was like my dream is his dream, right?
mm,
So he was like, look, we're in this together, like we're teammates on this thing. We're gonna do whatever we can to make it happen. Like that was the
mm.
kind of environment that we were in. And yeah, the I understood at that time that in
How
order
old
for
were
me to
you?
make this, I'm like 10 or 11 years old at this
Really
time.
young.
I'm really young. But I understood at that time, I was like, if I want to make this become my reality, if I want to make this come true, I also need someone to push me.
Mm,
And he was that person for me, right?
mhm,
And honestly, like looking back at it, like wow, he was there. He was literally there for me whenever I needed it. Sometimes like he had to be hard on me, and I didn't really like it, but I had to experience those things to, move on and to understand. And other times, yeah, he was just there to take me to training, take me to my games, do all that
mm,
stuff, which is super important. And to have that type of support from him and even from my mother, like it it really helped. It really, really
yeah,
helped on that
yeah.
journey. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow. And so then you get to this point where you were just saying that
hmm
Canada, just like the US at that time, soccer wasn't that big. I mean, so where is soccer? And where did you
Yeah.
look?
So, to simplify things, I was never like the best player on my team. I was never the one standing out, like, you know, dribbling past everyone and like just everyone was like, "Wow, he's such a good player." That wasn't me. So I understood at a very young age, like, okay, if I wanted to do things within the sport, I had to do things differently, which is why I put in the extra work, which is why I would think differently and all of that. That's where that came from. And ultimately what happened was with the my most recent academy that I was with in Canada, we were exposed to soccer outside of Canada. So we went to Mexico to play in a tournament over there. We went to Chile to play against like some professional academies over there. We went to England and we played against some academies over there, such as Manchester City's academy, which is like one of the biggest clubs in the world as of today. And then I realized I was like, wow, okay, there are so many levels to this game, and this
Yeah.
is not where it's happening. Canada is not where it's happening right now. If I want to have any chance of making it, I have to leave. So, I remember it was New Year's Day of 2015. We were doing a goal setting session with my family, which we do every year. It was our
That's
annual goal
amazing.
setting.
What a
Yeah.
great practice.
Which, by the way, I recommend to anyone. Like goal setting is just amazing, and to do it with your family, it's even more special because you get to
Yeah.
share your dreams and your goals with everyone, and that's really cool.
Mhm.
Parents get to share their dreams and goals with their kids to help them like
Yeah, which is
inspire them.
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. And then vice versa, you get to, as parents, you get to learn more about your kids and what they want for themselves and all that stuff. So I think it's really, really cool.
I
Um,
love that.
s-
If I had a do-over, that would be one of mine.
yeah. So yeah,
Awesome.
we did that. We were doing that in 2015, and one of the goals that I had written down on my paper in my journal was I want to move to Europe to continue my journey to become a professional soccer player. And
How did that
they
go
might
over at the dinner table?
but here's the thing, like many people would be like, yeah, okay, whatever, like,
Yeah.
come on, Rehan. Um, that wasn't the case for my family. My family was like, okay, that's awesome. That was the first reaction. And then when you get a reaction like that, it's not like you don't have any animosity or you don't have any tension, you don't have any negativity. You're like, okay, this is cool. You get that support, you get that love.
And I want to point that out right now because as a parent,
Yeah.
when some your child says something so that means so much to them,
Hmm.
whether it sounds crazy to you or not, you've got to support that.
Yeah.
Because if you oh, I mean, that's ridiculous. You're never going to
Yeah.
be able to do that. You can't move to Europe. What are you talking about? I mean, I can hear a lot of parents doing that, especially at,
Yeah.
you want to move to Europe and you're not even a teenager yet.
Yeah, I was 12.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, but
Yeah.
they didn't do that,
Yeah.
which I just think is such love
Yeah.
for a child to go, your dream is so big. It seems like most people wouldn't do it, but they were open, and that's just volumes.
Yeah. It's special. It's really
It's special.
special.
And and I just that's parents. That's
Yeah.
one.
And also, and as I'm gonna keep telling my story, like it just gets better and better as we move along the journey in terms of how they were there for me, right? Um, so yeah, I wrote that down. I wrote that goal down, and then quickly realized like, okay, yeah, I've written down this goal. Like I know what I want for myself, but there are things that have to happen for me to get there. And obviously, like I'm 12 years old at the time, so I don't understand how everything works in the world,
Mm-mm.
right?
Yeah.
I need guidance, I need help on how to go about things. But essentially, with like my parents and everything, we kind of came up with a plan. So there's a lot of research that had to be done. So I did a lot of the research of like, okay, what countries should we look into, right? So some of the countries that we thought about were England, for example, because I speak the language in England, had some family in England as well. So that was an option for me. Another option was to go to a different country that we didn't really know, so like a country like Spain or Portugal or something like that, which we quickly like kind of shut down because I mean, it was just so much more difficult, right, to
Mhm.
to get into a country like that. And then there was one country, and it was France. And the reason why France was so appealing was because I was learning French at school in
Mm.
Canada. So when it comes to the language, like, I mean, I was kind of familiar with it. And then the second thing was that I had both of my grandparents living in France.
Ah, okay.
So I had very close family there. So then, yeah, we pretty much said, okay, look, let's focus on France. Let's see what we can do in France. And then yeah, did research, found clubs and all that stuff, and then we started contacting them, and eventually, we got responses and had to go and try out. So in fact, I'll give you an idea of what like the timeline was like. Um, we in February of 2015, we had started calling all these clubs and everything and trying to get information. By that point, we had already had a conversation with my grandparents, who are my mom's parents, and we had asked them, if this does happen, if this does turn into something, would you guys be okay with having Rehan stay with you? They
Mhm.
were like, yes, 100%, of course. So that was already there in place. And then in March, my grandfather, he wasn't doing too well at the time. He was undergoing quite a few surgeries and stuff like that because he had cancer.
Mm.
So my mother and I, in March for her spring break, we went to France so that she could go and see her father, spend time with him, and so that we could also go and check out the clubs and all that stuff. So we did that. Um, it was really cool. I had a good experience when it comes to the soccer side of things. It was also nice for me to see my grandfather. And then that started to develop. And then in May, they had asked me to go and try out. Um, the tryouts were at the end of May, the very end of May. And on May 26th that year, my grandfather passed away.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot that was going on at that time. Grandfather passed away right after the funeral. Like, I'm talking days after the funeral. My father and I, we left to France for the tryout. And I do the tryout. I don't feel like I performed well. My dad and I both felt like, I hadn't done enough to
Mhm.
get noticed, get seen, and be selected. But then we land back in Canada. My dad gets a text message saying that I was in, that I got in.
Wow. What did
And
that feel like?
the initial reaction was like, because I think in my head at least, I can't speak for my dad because I don't know exactly what's going on in his head, but my reaction, like, because in my head I'd already said like it's not happening. Like I already told myself like, hey, it's not gonna
Yeah.
come to life. So my initial reaction was shock. He showed me the message and I just looked at him. I was like, what the, my jaw had just dropped, I was like, whoa. And then we just started laughing together. And we like I think I must have given him a hug or like I don't know, just like, clap his hand. I don't know what it was, but like, one of those things. We're literally in the plane, by the way. Like we've just landed. We're in the plane. Um, and then from there it's like, okay, this is happening now.
Yeah. So that
This is
this
happening.
goal, it's like, oh no, it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And
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 it's
it's
not an
like,
easy, it's not a tiny one, it's a big one.
yeah, and there's so much to think about now because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, look, how does my grandmother feel about it? Because now my grandfather's not there anymore,
Oh,
so
right.
she's gonna be on her own. There's gonna be all these other things as well about like, okay, visas, getting all the paperwork and everything ready for me to go, and all of that stuff. Um, and one thing that's really good is that my parents, they didn't do everything for me. They helped me do what was necessary.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
even
Very
even
valuable.
even applying for the visa, okay? Which is like you have to get all these professional documents, you have to contact people, you have to do all that stuff. They weren't like, okay, I will do it for you. They were like, okay, what do you need to do? What do you need help with? You want us to
Mm.
read over things, make sure that you have everything, like we'll do that. But they were they were letting me do all of that work and it's so valuable because as I grew up and things like that, like I knew how to do things that not many people knew how to do at that age.
Right. Because
um
most parents do it all for them, for
yeah.
their kids. Yeah.
So then yeah, so that all of that happened like really quickly because this is like in June and if I was going to leave it was going to be in July, right? So it's all happening really quickly. I remember for my birthday, like my parents, they got me an iPad because they were like, "Look, we need to be able to Skype you because it was Skype back in the day. There's a Skype call." So yeah, they got me an iPad so I could, talk to them every day. I didn't have a phone at that time either. Um, so yeah, that was that whole situation. In regards to my grandmother, she was still very okay with me going. And in some really cool way, we were able to be there for each other.
Hmm.
Me
Yeah. She
being
just
away from
lost her husband.
family,
Yeah.
me being away from family, and her just losing her husband, who honestly they had such an incredible relationship as well. Like they really, really loved each other. So it was really hard for her. But the fact that the two of us were kind of able to just be there, just to have each other's presence. And then as
Mm.
time went on, I started to understand more about what she was feeling and be there for her more emotionally as well.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it worked out in some miraculous, weird, universal way where
Yeah.
things just lined up the way they had to line
Right.
up. And it all started with me just writing this goal down on a piece of paper, which
Wild.
is,
And
yeah,
as a parent to have at 13, right? You were
yeah,
13 when you went over there, to give up having your child be there with you every day.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. I mean, I just became an empty nester like 2 years ago, and I'm just like, and they were after college. So
yeah.
to that is just huge amount of sacrifice on the part of your parents to give up
Yeah.
that time with you
Yeah.
for you to pursue your dream.
And I didn't realize it until later on.
Yeah.
I thought that I was making the sacrifice. I thought that I was leaving home. I thought that I was moving countries and that that's what was happening. I was thinking very selfishly at the time, obviously, as when you're young, like you're not thinking about everyone else all the
No,
time, right?
no.
But then yeah, when I was about 15, I would say I started to really understand like what was going on and the sacrifices that like my mom, my dad, and even my sister, like the sacrifice that they had to
Yeah.
make. But it's almost like they could have told me like, no, you're not allowed to go. We're not letting you go. But that's not
Mhm.
who they are, right? So in some weird way, it's almost like my choice forced them to sacrifice
Yes.
that side
Yes.
of things, right? And
Mhm.
there was a time where I did feel guilty for that because there's so many things that you miss out on. Birthdays, for example, I know like, it's superficial or whatever, but these are moments that you don't get back, right?
Mm-mm.
Um, and to put it to you this way, I'm I'm 22 years old now. I
Tomorrow.
spent tomorrow, yeah. I spent I spent 9 years of my life away from home,
Yeah, that's a
which is
lot.
almost half, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
it is.
And what I mean from away from home is not just like location. I mean away from like family. I mean away from my parents, away from my sister, away from my cousins and my uncle,
Your
my aunt, like
friends.
friends, everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's like now I've made the decision to come back to Canada. One of the main reasons is because I want to not make up for lost time because I don't think that you can, but I want to start creating some more memories and get closer to my family because we are so close. We were able to stay really, really close, but there's a side of me that's like, you know what? I'm ready to just come back home.